Hello everyone, I'm Mike, and I'll be guiding you through our topic, transitioning from staff to supervisor. Now, let's get into the content. One of the most exciting and frightening career transitions comes when you take on the role of a manager for the first time. For most newly appointed managers, the skill and qualities that earn them the promotion are very different from those that serve them well as a leader. New managers are often left to figure out how to learn and lead on their own, and they're not always successful at that. You can't help but wonder how many managers at rapidly growing companies had any management experience and training before they assumed positions of power. When you transition from staff member to supervisor, you're not just moving into a higher league. You're playing an entirely new game with all sets of new rules. Suddenly, you're faced with different expectations and responsibilities, and you have to worry about your own performance as well as the performance of those on your team. You also face the added stress of managing your relationships with peers who may now be your direct reports. Your ability to do your job well has been moving you up the ladder. But what happens when you transition from a position you've mastered into a supervisory role? Over the next hour, I'll review proven strategies that managers have used when they transition into supervisory roles, and I'll give you expert advice for establishing yourself as a leader, tackling communication problems, and handling even the toughest situations with skill and poise. Throughout this presentation, we will discuss how to earn trust and respect from colleagues and team members, establish your authority without being overbearing, take charge of your time and priorities, manage friends and close associates who used to be your peers, develop a strong working relationship with employees of all ages, and delegate well to develop your employees' skills and create an environment of meaningful accountability and resolve conflict in a manner that leaves all parties satisfied. Let's get started. An important place to start is how to earn trust and respect from colleagues and team members. It begins with tactfulness. 5 things that can damage trust in any relationship are making promises that you can't keep, talking about people or disagreeing with decisions behind colleagues' back, stretching the truth, just skating by, and crying wolf. Choose your words carefully, being mindful of people's feelings. Don't discuss individual problems in group settings, and learn how to show respect and give people the respect you would like to receive. As a manager, you'll want to exhibit respect for different ideas, opinions, feelings, and perspectives, and show respect for others by listening attentively for comprehension. Think about how you can understand the emotions behind the words or behaviors. Use active listening skills and avoid making judgments. Instead, find common ground and learn to effectively manage conflict. When you move into a supervisory role, you'll need to share ideas, concerns, and responsibilities, so you'll want to focus on fostering an environment of camaraderie. Use words that are often designed to gain cooperation and buy-in from employees, and focus on the solution. If someone makes a mistake, learn to turn the other cheek. Recognize that everyone makes mistakes or has an off day. Be open to forgive and forget. It makes people accept your faults or mistakes more readily, as long as you are willing to admit them and ask for forgiveness. Let's take a look at some of the ways you can establish credibility. First, do what you say when you say you're going to do it. If there are extenuating situations where you cannot meet an obligation or a promise, explain why without apologizing or going into unnecessary detail. Next, have contingencies in place when problems arise. If you need to point out a problem, come armed with some potential solutions. Or if you have a problem with a coworker, go to that person first in earnest to seek a solution. Treat others with the respect you would like to be shown. Don't talk badly behind others' backs. Admit mistakes as soon as you become aware of them, and don't pass the buck. Finally, be willing to go above and beyond your responsibilities to get results. Become the go-to person that people can count on. Establishing trust also means building rapport with others. Here are some key ways you can connect with people. Smile, shake hands, look people in the eye, keep your posture upright, and face people when addressing them. Come up with some go-to questions to ask to help you find something in common. Be honest and upfront, instead of answering the way you think someone wants you to answer. Make the other person feel like an expert. Empathize without negating others' realities. Dress so that you look good but fit in. Be sure to adjust your body language and word choice to match the other person. Let's take a look at how to establish your authority without being overbearing. When you are self-confident, it shows in your word choice, your body language, and posture, as well as in how you treat others. If you don't have as much self-confidence as you would like, fake it until you make it. The more you act like you're confident, the more confident you will become. The greater your self-esteem, the greater your ability will be to lead, motivate, and persuade others. The lower your self-esteem, the less ability you'll have to lead, motivate, and persuade. How you talk to yourself and treat yourself determines the strength of your self-esteem. Your verbal and nonverbal clues give messages to others about how you wish to be treated by them. So let's be sure not to sabotage your self-confidence level. Focus on how you communicate. You want to say what you mean and mean what you say. Avoid self-deprecating language and watch for padded words and phrases. Monitor your voice and tone. Keep your body language in check and stop saying sorry. Think about some of your bad habits and then replace them with good ones. Start using more powerful language, such as, I have a solution, rather than, I have an idea. Your reputation influences how others treat you. Have you ever heard the saying that perception is reality? What others perceive about you, whether it's true or not, becomes their reality, and it affects how they act around you and how they treat you. It also affects the amount of respect they have for you and your influence on them. Managing your reputation is all about managing and influencing others' perceptions about you. When you talk about someone informally, ask how the other person perceives you. Ask your boss if he or she has heard anything about you. Also, ask for feedback from colleagues, especially at the end of a project. Once you learn how you are perceived, adopt language that is contrary to their perceptions and make sure your actions follow your language to dispel the myths. If someone perceives you negatively, do not act confrontationally. Ask what you can do differently, then do it. Take responsibility for your mistakes and indicate how you are going to learn from them and go forward. Let's take a look at the basic rules of influencing anyone at any level. First, make a personal connection and establish your credibility. Ever hear the phrase, "What's in it for me?" Identify the benefits for the other person up front and create desire. Identify any consequences of not changing, and then involve your audience so they get the buy-in. Call them to action repeatedly. Your voice must be heard, but how do you do that as a new leader? Let's take a look. Do you have a message that's worth hearing? Don't lose credibility with a half-formed idea. Consider your thoughts from all perspectives and anticipate possible objections and questions. Consider the listener's point of view. Are you giving relevant information to the person you are talking to? Establish a command presence early by speaking loudly, directly, and clearly. Repeat the gist of your message using different words and even different media. Start sentences with the person's name to get his or her attention. Tell the person up front how many points you have to discuss. That way, if you're cut off, you can remind him or her that you have another point that needs to be shared. Then ask questions to control the conversation. What does it mean to be a next-level leader? This is very important. Only make promises you can keep. You will lose credibility quickly if you don't follow through on your word. You have to respect everyone at each level and treat others as you want to be treated, but also as they need to be treated. Improve your speaking patterns and your vocal quality, and don't apologize for or qualify everything that you have to say. Next-level leaders are also strategic thinking and look at the long-term plan rather than just what is happening right now. Organize your ideas so others understand them more easily and work to be more decisive and more results-driven. Be consistent and act with integrity. Also, give credit where credit is due. Some of the greatest leaders always pay credit forward. Demonstrate competency and accept accountability. It's okay to make mistakes. Just make sure you're learning from them. None of us are perfect. Listen attentively to challenges of individuals and teams within the organization so you can offer to help. Be a coach and collaborate cross-functionally when you can to help remove bottlenecks from different departments. Support other team members aside from your own boss, and they'll do the same for you. Understand and portray the values of your organization. Ask yourself this question: would I rather be right, or would I rather get along with this person? Become visible to top management if you want to advance up in the corporate ladder. Time management is key to being an effective leader. Now let's look at how you can take charge of your time and priorities to boost your effectiveness. To help maintain and sustain a more stable and grounded presence, be sure that you are setting the right priorities for yourself and have strategies for managing the workload of a leader as you take on the larger role and responsibility. Most people who struggle with time management and organizational skills don't accept responsibility for their shortcomings. They tend to make excuses for being late to work or missing deadlines, and they blame external events for making them disorganized. We've all been guilty of making these excuses. When we make a habit of lying to others this way, we start to live it and believe it is real. Overcoming time management and organizational struggles requires ditching that victim mentality and taking responsibility for your actions no matter what happens. How can you overcome procrastination and other bad habits? When you avoid doing a task that needs to be accomplished, you are procrastinating. In simple terms, procrastination is delaying what you should be doing right now. A renowned psychologist estimated that 90% of college students procrastinate, and there is a high likelihood that similar statistics carry over to work. Chronic procrastination is tied to self-esteem issues. We doubt ourselves, so we put off doing what we need to do. Self-doubt leads to poor decision-making or not making decision at all because we're paralyzed to act. We're afraid that the results won't be good enough, or if we fail, things won't be perfect. When we don't do our tasks at all, then that creates the snowball effect of one missed deadline leading to another late deadline and then another. Do you ever put off the most important tasks until later, but then you stay busy with the least important tasks? Does an approaching deadline mean a crisis? Do you sometimes hesitate when making decisions? Those are all the things you must overcome with effective time management, because procrastination causes so many layers and levels of a lack of productivity. The reasons for procrastinating could be that you don't like the task, or you're afraid of failure. Maybe there's a lack of clear goals or planning, or you underestimated the difficulty of the task and put it off. Then you realize it's going to take a lot more time than what you've allowed to complete it. Maybe you have unclear expectations about the outcome, feel like you have no say, or the task was just dumped on you and you don't know where to start. How do you eliminate procrastination? Here's a strategy you can apply to help you stop procrastinating. First, identify the underlying reason for the procrastination. Look at the causes like the fear or failure or lack of plan, then address it. Don't let it have that power over you, and remember, you control how you react to external events. Then eliminate or minimize the trigger. By identifying it, you are already gaining control. If you can't get rid of the trigger, such as delegating or a task you dislike, figure out a coping mechanism. Enlist someone else's help in eliminating or minimizing the trigger if you can't figure it out yourself. Also, review your priorities. Is this task the most important thing you should be doing right now? If so, you'll have to get it done. But if it's not, prioritize it accordingly and come back to it later. Next, find or create something to motivate you to stop procrastinating, like rewarding yourself after you've completed a small chunk of dull tasks. Some tasks can seem too much to handle, but breaking them into manageable chunks will make it easier to achieve and won't feel as overwhelming. Identify clear stopping points, then reward yourself when you reach it. To finish the entire task, set a deadline and have someone hold you accountable. Don't quit until you reach your deadline. Those who are chronic procrastinators might need an outside party to hold them accountable to their many unofficial deadlines. Finally, don't expect perfection. Now, this sounds simplistic, but the best way to overcome procrastination is to just jump in and get started, then reach that finish line. The more times that you can do that successfully, the more it will become a habit. Let's look at a quick and easy way you can prioritize your tasks and put you in the control. List the tasks that you need to complete, then assign a numerical value to 1, 2, or 3 to represent the importance of each task, with 1 being the most important. Arrange the tasks into order of deadlines, listing those with the most pressing deadlines first. Assign a numeric value of 1, 2, or 3 to represent the level of immediacy required, with 1 being the task with the earliest deadline. Then rearrange the tasks so those with the lowest scores become first. This helps you understand the order of importance and take control of your tasks. So as we talk about priorities and making prioritization maps and things along those lines, I think a great way to really make a practical exercise out of these conversations is to look at the Covey quadrants, as it's commonly referred to. So as we talk about this practical application, what I want you to do is I want you to grab a piece of paper and I just want you to divide it into 4 sections like you see here. So you've got 4 sections, and then I'm just going to label them 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll create 4 subsections based off of this here. And what we're going to do next is these are our 4 quadrant sections that we're going to divide up our tasks into. So the first one, these are your items that are both important and they're urgent. And really for each of these tasks, what we're trying to divide up is the different types of importance and urgency and the different types of tasks that we have throughout the day. So our section 2, these are going to be things that are important but aren't necessarily urgent. So then section 3, these are the things that are not important but they are urgent. And then section 4, as you could probably guess, are the items that are not important or urgent. So as we start to think about the different types of tasks that we do throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, we're wanting to think of how they fit into these 4 different categories. And as I start to discuss what fits into these 4 different categories, I want you to start thinking about some of the tasks that you have throughout your day and your week that you could fit into these categories. So as I start kind of explaining what each of these categories are, go ahead and start putting together a list of your own tasks and maybe put it down at the bottom or on another separate piece of paper. So let's think about it first. So section 1, these are your important and your urgent tasks. So these are your deadline focused tasks. These are the most demanding tasks during your days. This can be where the stress comes from in your day. But these are the things that are immediate and that need to be managed right away, like crisis-driven items or deadline-driven items. These are your pressing items. So these are the things that are deadline-driven. I'll go ahead and write that down. So section 2, these are your important items, but not necessarily as urgent. So these are the things that are going to require focus and time management skills to be able to be able to get done. So these are things like planning and long-term projects, new opportunities, development, any of those kind of things like relationship building. So these are the items that require focus. So they are focus-driven tasks. Now, the next topic is not important but urgent tasks. So these are the tasks that can often sometimes feel like they fit in category 1, that's important and urgent, these deadline-driven tasks. These are things that really kind of create the illusion of importance but aren't necessarily that important themselves. And things that fall into this category are things like interruptions, things that are good items to delegate, busy work, certain meetings and phone calls, emails, popular activities, things like that. So these have the illusion of importance. And I'll go ahead and put that there. And then lastly, we have items that are not important or urgent. And these are the nice to have items. These are the things that can be sometimes trivial or busy work that doesn't really have any particular urgency to them. They're really just filling time or something like that. So, these are your busy tasks like that. And really, the way I like to refer to these tasks is these are the escapism tasks. So these are the tasks that you use to distract yourself from other things. And, I like to think that there are certain times where it's good to have those kind of tasks, and there's certain times where it's not good to have those tasks. A lot of times when we're spending a lot of our time in this section 1 with most of the work that we're doing through the day, sometimes it's good just to have some time that you spend using those escapism tasks. So hopefully by now you've had a chance to really look at your own agenda throughout the week and come up with some ideas for different things that you have going on during the week. And I want to just throw in a couple examples, just some examples that someone might normally have during their week. And we'll just kind of go through just to kind of use as a practical exercise, look through these different tasks and see how they fit into the different categories here. So what we have here is we have things like scheduling a meeting for a project kickoff, answering email and phone calls. That's something that's basically part of everybody's day-to-day. Export campaign reports for a marketing team, attend project wrap-up meetings, watch a professional development webinar, clean and organize my desk, develop PowerPoints for an upcoming sales meeting, organizing loose files and paperwork, updating project management boards, and reviewing workflow processes for improvements. So we've got a pretty healthy list here of a few things that you might have going on throughout the day. This is just an example, of course. But let's just go ahead and start breaking it down through the list. So item 1, scheduling a meeting for a project kickoff. So this is something that I would typically put in section 1 because it's something that's important because it's related to your projects, and projects tend to be deadline focused. They tend to be deadline driven. So that's something that you're probably going to need to be focusing on, especially since it's a kickoff meeting. That means it's going to be something that you specifically are going to need to do as soon as possible so that the rest of the project can continue on from there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in section 1 here. All right, and then what's another item here? So answering email and phone calls. So as you maybe guessed, that's something that is regularly pretty urgent because when someone emails you or sends you a phone call, they're expecting that you're going to respond to them within a reasonable amount of time. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that phone call or that email is the most urgent thing in your day or that it's not the most important thing in your day. So what I think that emails and phone calls usually fall under is the not important but urgent category, or section 3. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put it in that category because these are the kind of things that can really make you feel like you're busy all day, but they don't necessarily help you accomplish anything throughout your day. So there's something that you want to try and avoid getting wrapped up in too much of your day if you can. So I'll go ahead and put email and phone here. So the next item that's on my list is to export a campaign report for a marketing team. So this is one of those items as well that I would fit into the category of not important but urgent. And that's because it's something that's really busy work. It's something that maybe you don't necessarily have to be the person to do, but it is something that needs to be done in order to maintain those campaigns that it's in reference to. So I put that just as well in that section 3 to go along with email and phone. So what's next? We've got attend a project wrap-up meeting. So this same way here, these are the kind of items that they're on a set schedule. There's something that's going to be on your calendar, but they're not necessarily the most important thing in your day. So I would consider this item to also fall within that section 3 type category. So we'll go ahead and put that there as well. All right, and then what else do we have? Watch a professional development webinar. Now this one, interestingly enough, a lot of times we neglect to really think about how important these type of things are. And so we tend to put them in the not important, not urgent type category. But one of the things that's important to consider is that anything that falls into the category of development and new opportunities, that kind of thing, self-improvement, these are things that are important for a part of your priorities and the such. So, these are always the kind of things that I like to put in section 2 that's important, but not necessarily urgent, because they're things that are focus driven. They're things that you really want to make sure you set aside some time for while you're in that focus driven mindset through your day. So I'm going to go ahead and put attend webinar up here. All right, and then what's next? We've got a few other things we can do. Cleaning and organizing my desk. Obviously, that's something that's not really going to be critical to the benefit of the organization, unless you have a client that's coming in for a client-side visit or something along those lines. But for the most part, that is going to be something that falls under the not important, not urgent type of category. That really you're going to use that as a time to really distract yourself from other things that you could be doing. So I put that into section 4. So we're going to say clean desk here. All right, what's next? Develop a PowerPoint for upcoming sales meetings. I think along the same lines as a kickoff meeting, developing a PowerPoint for a sales meeting, that's something that's both urgent and important because it's something that's very time-driven, very deadline-driven, that's probably part of a project, and really something that you're going to need to make sure that you're focusing on as much as you can. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on section 1 as well. All right, we've got just a few items left here and just a few more things to look at. So organizing loose files and paperwork, as you could probably guess, I would fit that in the same category as cleaning your desk. So these are the non-important items that are really busy work, that are really things that just kind of distract you from the day-to-day. So let's go ahead and put that here as well under filing. And then a few other things, update project management board. This is another one of those items where it is somewhat urgent because of the fact that it revolves around reporting information to others that might be involved in a project. So there is some urgency there, but it's not necessarily the most important thing in your day. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in section 3 as well. So we're going to say update on projects. And then the last thing, review workflow processes for improvements. These are things that fall under the development category, and these are things that really kind of help things move forward, but aren't necessarily the most urgent things that you have to deal with during your day. So this is the kind of thing that's very important, but not necessarily urgent, so it goes in section 2. So I'll go ahead and put that under here as well. All right, so we've taken all of our categories here, we've taken all of our tasks and fit them into the categories that we have, the 4 different categories based off of whether or not it's important or urgent. So now we have a better idea of where our tasks lie throughout the day. So the next thing we want to do, and really just to kind of wrap it up through this kind of practice here, is to think about how these different items through our day, how we can make sure that we're accomplishing them in an effective way. So the important and urgent section 1 items are the things that you're just going to have to deal with as soon as you can. So these are the items that you're just going to address as soon as you know they're there. These are the really important things. A lot of times these are the things that you really don't get to schedule throughout your day. These are the things that you really have to just do it when they're there. As opposed to section 2 items, we talk a little bit about the idea of understanding when our peak times are, when we're able to really focus and really get our work done. These are our golden hours. The section 2 items are great items to save and really use that focus time, those golden hours, to be able to focus on that type of work. Along with the same deal, not important and not urgent items in section 3. These are the items that you want to avoid as most as possible. Now, we obviously can't always avoid these items, especially when it comes to email and phone and things along those lines. Whenever we have those type of tasks, we're obviously going to have to deal with them at some point, but we just want to make sure that that's not the type of item that's going to suck up most of our day. The reason being that you've probably heard the concept before. There's a difference between being busy and being effective. Well, this is one of those main instances in which you can spend all of your day being busy, answering phones, answering emails, but that doesn't necessarily make you effective at your work. So in those kind of regards, you want to make sure that you're trying not to spend all of your day working on those particular things. So the last obvious section here is section 4. These are your not important and not urgent tasks. And I think to editorialize a little bit, I do see some value in taking time to do these tasks. And as I kind of highlighted here, that these are your escapism tasks. You don't want to spend too much of your time working on these type of things, but it is a good idea to use some of your time doing these things, because these are the things that really kind of help you escape from the day-to-day. They're the things that kind of help you reset. These are a good thing to use if you have certain times during the day where you're not very effective. If you have times during the day where you're not very productive, say that's at the very end of the day where you find it really easy to be distracted, or early in the day when you haven't had your coffee yet, something along those lines, when you're non-peak hours. These are good times to focus on these types of tasks where you don't necessarily want to focus on tasks that really have a lot of value to them. So that's when you really want to do that. So once you have these categories put together on like this, the next thing and the last thing you really want to do is just take the rest of your paper here and really just start taking the items and prioritizing them based off of these 4 categories. So what I would just do here is take each of these items that I've highlighted and then just start prioritizing 1 to 10 and just saying these are the tasks that need to be done first, these are the tasks that can be done last, and along those lines. Especially these tasks towards the bottom here, these are the tasks that you also want to ask the question of, is this something that I can delegate? Which is something that we'll talk about a little bit further into this webinar. Planning guarantees more productivity. To be productive, you'll want to identify the objective and the next steps, then establish tangible, reachable goals. This will allow you to focus and refocus on the tasks and remove distractions. You can clump those similar tasks for efficiency, keeping good records, clear out the clutter, and review objectives, the needs, the plans, and the goals' frequencies to identify necessary adjustments. You must be flexible in your planning because the plan might change. How can you find your key productivity time and make the most of it? Once you've identified your list of priorities, add those priorities into your calendar, and those tasks that have a high priority and high return on investment should be the tasks that you're working on when you have the highest energy of the day. We all have spans of time during the day when we're more energetic, more productive, and more times when we're sleepy and unproductive. So by identifying your peak productivity times and scheduling accordingly, you increase that productive power. Here's how it works. Divide your day into 2-hour segments. Place an X in one of the 3 boxes for each of the 2-hour segments, indicating a high, medium, or low level of energy during that time of day. Once you've identified your high level of energy, that's when you want to schedule your high priority and high return on investment tasks. You can also use a time log to identify what's working and what isn't. Did you know that each time we're distracted from a task, it can take us up to 2 minutes to refocus? Anything that would take us 20 minutes can take us up to 60 minutes when we're distracted. So if you take the time to look at the areas of distraction, you can start mitigating those distractions. Divide a sheet of paper into columns or create a table where you have times, activity, schedules, interruptions, what's urgent, and who's involved. Go about your workday as usual. Update the time log every time as a new activity begins, or at a set interval, such as every 15 to 30 minutes. Be sure that you're logging your interruptions. At the end of the week, you'll be able to identify the areas where you're wasting most of your time. What does that time log tell you? It can tell you what percentage of time is spent in the different areas, what percentage of activities are urgent, who takes up most of your time, and which activities go as planned. Then identify those main interruptions so you can get ahead of them. Using your time log will help you cut back or even eliminate those distractions. It can help you identify, simplify, or delegate some of those tasks, and which related tasks you can group to save time. We have to be able to identify time wasters and avoid or even eliminate them. Some of them might even be your own behaviors. Don't waste others' time just because you can't manage your own time. To stop procrastinating, take the first step and finish the task at hand. Again, aim for results, not for perfection. Let's look at meetings. Meetings can be one of our biggest time wasters, so think about other ways you can collaborate with others. Can you use technology to collaborate without actually having a meeting? Can you attend only part of a meeting that's pertinent to you? Go in with some outcomes, results, and an agenda, then stick to it. Be sure to start and finish on time. Hold unimportant meetings late on Fridays or shortly just before lunch. Also, maximize your phone calls. If you have to leave a message, be prepared for what you're going to say. Keep it brief with the bottom line up front. Know what you want to accomplish. End the call when objectives are met, and screen calls if possible. Consider budgeting time for phone calls, email, or text instead to supplement. Reading materials can also be time wasters. Handle your magazines, articles, or newsletters only once, then pass them on, delete, or recycle. The last barrier to productivity is interruptions. Sometimes we just have to tell people we don't have time. We're all social beings, but we have to capitalize on the time we have to gain the productivity power. We might have to tell people when we're available and when we're not. Prevent them from sitting down by removing the chair in front of your desk. Stand up when they come in. Move closer to them to help them understand that they need to leave your office in a respectful way. If the conversation is necessary, suggest meeting at a later time, perhaps in their office or at a neutral location. It might look something like this. Mary, I'm really busy on this task, and I have a really short deadline, but I'd love to catch up with you. Can we do coffee tomorrow? While we need to have those interpersonal relationships, we also need to get our jobs done. Let's face it, we all need friends at work. Sometimes we are looking for advice on a project, or we want to celebrate a client, a win, or a milestone. We need to vent about how demanding, controlling, or unreasonable other things might be. This is what friends are for, and there are often proven benefits to such relationships. Research from Gallup has shown that people who have a best friend at work are more engaged and that their organizations show higher profitability and customer loyalty than those in which close friendships between colleagues are less common. If you've recently been promoted into your first managerial role, you must understand that having close friends at work can also be complicated. Before you and your friends complained about the boss behind his or her back, now you're the boss, and they're complaining about you potentially behind your back. They might even expect preferential treatment, and other employees might worry about favoritism. It can be difficult to adjust to managing people who used to be your coworkers. Sometimes people don't take tasks and projects as seriously as they should because they think they can use their friendly relationship with you to their advantage. How can you best manage friends and close associates who used to be your peers? Let's take a look at some specific strategies. First, you have to signal the transition. Make everyone aware of that transition. Talk to your current boss or HR about how to manage communications about that promotion. Second, don't introduce major overhauls right away. Demonstrate your new authority without stepping on toes or damaging relationships. Identify a few small decisions you can make fairly quickly, but defer bigger ones until you've been in the role longer and have time to gather greater input. Third, establish your authority. Take actions that establish your credibility and indicate how you'll work as a boss. Meet with your team as a group or individually and talk about your vision. Do as much listening as talking. Ask, what can I do to make you more successful? Fourth, unfortunately, you're going to have to distance yourself from friends in a work setting. You cannot maintain close personal relationships with former peers because it will appear that you're playing favorites. Remove yourself from social interactions. Don't become aloof or unavailable, but attend fewer social gatherings on the clock. Fifth, try out new personas. Vary how you lead people, then practice these different personas to see what works for you. 6. Deal with the disappointed competitor. If a peer was up for your job, allow him or her time to adjust to the new situation. Make it clear that you value him or her as an employee and that you plan to advocate for his or her development. Say something like this, I understand you're disappointed. You're an important part of this team, and I'm going to make sure that you have what you need to succeed. 7th, make use of advantages. You will know the politics of the organization better and are more likely to find someone you trust to give you feedback and let you know when you're messing up. Leverage existing relationships for honest input. And 8th, look beyond your team. Don't focus too much on former peers. Ask yourself how you can build credibility with new counterparts and how you can build a connection with your boss. Yes, you can still be friends with your subordinates, but everyone needs to realize that your work relationship has changed. You have to set clear expectations and boundaries. For example, talk with your friends about the new responsibilities you face. Explain that you are accountable for the development and the performance of your friends and coworkers. Be an effective leader for the entire group. The amount of time you spend with them and the tenure of your interaction will probably have to change. Be fair. When it comes to bonuses, raises, promotions, supports, and resources, leave your personal biases aside. If your friends deserve them and it's documented, great. If not, and your friends are still rewarded, then gossip, politics, and distrust will follow. Be aware that when you have on your supervisory hat, all eyes are on you. So pay close attention to the signals you are sending. How much time, energy, and resources you're giving your friends compared to others. Ask your boss or a trusted mentor to observe and provide feedback. Here are a few more strategies you can use when managing former peers. Meet with each member of your team one-on-one. This lets you personalize the message and can be more candid than you can be in a group setting. Spend a considerable amount of time in each meeting listening to your new employees. Say things like, walk me through your objectives, and where are things currently? Are there any specific areas that you would like my support in? Tell me about your development plan and any career conversations that you've been having. Paraphrase and summarize responses to make sure you're receiving the right message. Balance the friendly, inclusive approach with some signs of strength. Share your vision early for the team and any priorities that you have and want to tackle first. Make room for comments and questions so your team members feel like co-authors of the plan. Grow it together, build it together. Enlist individual support. Ask for assistance in a genuine way that makes direct reports feel valued and engaged. Acknowledge your changing role and let them know that you have their backs, but ask them to focus on solutions instead of the problem they have with the company. Tell them your focus is on employee happiness and then embrace the change. Ramp up your social life outside of the office. Also, get to know your new boss and new managerial colleagues better. As a leader, you'll have to meet the needs of those you are leading and develop a strong working relationship with the employees of all ages. For the first time, 5 generations are currently employed in the workplace. We need to be able to communicate with colleagues despite any generational differences or misunderstandings that may exist. It's important to realize that each generation has its own unique characteristics and ways of communicating with one another. While there are no cookie-cutter solutions to communicating among the generations, here are some tendencies. Traditionalists are those born before 1946. As a group, traditionalists prefer more formal communications. Give them your undivided attention, use eye contact, and listen closely. Next comes the baby boomers, who were born between 1946 and 1964. Like traditionalists, boomers prefer face-to-face conversation and to be shown how to do things. If time is limited for an in-person discussion, consider video tutorials for the Show Me generation. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1979, are somewhat more adept with technology than their predecessors. This generation is juggling many things in their current stage of life, so email works well for them as a communication tool. It's always important to make sure they feel valued and that their voices are heard. Generation Y, or millennials, born between 1980 and 1995, are the first computer generation. They appreciate being challenged, but will resent anyone who talks down to them. They desire to be treated like an equal in the workplace, not as a child. As a generation, they want to be recognized in the workplace for their areas of responsibility and their technological savvy. Lastly, Generation Z was born after 1996, and they've been surrounded by all the latest and greatest technologies since they were born, but they do crave some face-to-face communication. Although social media and other technologies help feed their need for visual communication, face-to-face interaction fills their need for authenticity. As a leader, you'll want to consider adopting an optimistic attitude. Remember that members of every generation bring strengths, not just weaknesses or challenges to work. Use empathy to keep one generation from dictating or dominating another. Seek a mentor from each generation. Take advantage of work lunches, volunteer events, and other opportunities. Form intergenerational teams to reap the greatest benefits from everyone. Let's think about how we can create a culture that works for all ages. Millennials expect to work for companies with excellent cultures, and they're more willing to stay for them. Provide a workplace that employees of all ages can be proud of, a sense of community with colleagues, and honest, ethical leadership. Open up lines of communication between coworkers and management. No matter the generation, many employees will look forward to work when they feel their job is not just a job, but has some special meaning. Show kindness and compassion to workers of all ages and create a friendly, caring, and inclusive work environment. As a leader, delegation is one of the greatest tools in your leadership toolkit. So delegate well to develop your employees' skills. Delegation is your ability to get things done through others, but it's also empowering others to achieve results. When you are completely overloaded, delegation provides a great opportunity to cross-train someone to share the burden and the rewards. Here's some great steps for effective delegation. Be sure to describe the expected outcome. Be clear and concise. Give examples. Provide the how-to and give very clear instructions. Ask open-ended questions to be sure nothing is left to be assumed. Also set deadlines and checkpoints. When you have an enthusiastic beginner, someone who's new at a task, you might want to set closer-end checkpoints. When you have that competent achiever, someone who's done similar tasks, you may want to set further out checkpoints so you're not micromanaging. Clarify levels of responsibility and authority. Make sure they're clear on what their left and right boundaries are. Be available and provide feedback along the way. It's important that they feel coached and supported, but not micromanaged. It's a very delicate balance that you'll have to perfect as you become a more seasoned leader. Beyond mandated safety steps, let the delegate choose how to execute the task. Make sure that intent is clear and give them the tools to succeed. Choose the right delegate. Identify someone who can take the task at a lower cost than the delegator, can do the task at least 80% as well as the delegator, or can be trained to do so, and will somehow benefit from completing the task. There are some additional considerations as well, such as if the task requires decision-making that the delegator is not authorized to make. Then delegation has to go upward. If the right person is not available within the organization, delegation goes outward. Using the power of other people's help can be a win-win when done appropriately. However, that does not mean that you can delegate everything. To determine when delegation is appropriate, here are some of the key questions you need to ask yourself. Is there someone else who has or can be given the necessary information or expertise to complete the task? Essentially, is this a task that someone else can do, or is it a critical task that you must do yourself? Can the task provide an opportunity to grow and develop another person's skills? Is this a task that will recur in a similar form in the future? Do you have enough time to delegate the job effectively? Meaning, do you have the time to coach if this is a task the delegate hasn't done before? Time must be available for adequate training, for questions and for answers, for opportunities to check progress, and for rework that might be necessary. Is this a task that I should be delegating? Tasks critical for long-term success, for example, recruiting the right people for your team, generally do need your attention. If you can answer yes to at least some of the above questions, then it could well be worth delegating this task. Some other tasks that contribute to the ability to delegate a task include the project's timeline and deadline. How much time is there available to do the job? Is there time to redo the job if not done properly the first time? What are the consequences of not completing the job on time? What are your expectations or goals of the product or task, including how important is it that the results are of the highest possible quality? Is an adequate result good enough? Would a failure be crucial? How much would a failure impact other things? Then ask, to whom should we delegate? There are several factors to consider, such as the experience, knowledge, and the skills of the individual as they apply to the delegated task. What knowledge, skills, and attitudes does the person already have? Do you have time or the resources to provide any training needed? What is the individual's preferred work style? How independent is this person? What does he or she want from his or her job? What are his or her long-term goals and interests? How would they align with this proposed work? What is the person's current workload? Does the person have the time to take on more work? Will you delegating this task require reshuffling of other responsibilities and workloads? Once you've answered these questions, then you have to figure out how should you delegate. What's the appropriate delegation strategy? Use the following principles to delegate successfully. Clearly articulate the desired outcome. Begin with the end in mind and specify the results you desire. Clearly identify constraints and boundaries. Are there lines of authority, responsibility, and accountability? Be clear and concise with your boundaries. Where possible, include people in the delegation process. This empowers them to decide what tasks are being delegated to them and why. Match the amount of responsibility with the amount of authority. Understand that you can delegate some responsibilities, but you cannot delegate away ultimate accountability. The buck stops with you. Delegate to the lowest possible organizational level. The people who are closest to the work, the boots on the ground, if you will, are the best suited for the task because they have the most intimate knowledge of the detail of the everyday work. This also increases workplace efficiency and helps you to develop people. Provide adequate support and be available to answer questions. Ensure the project's success through ongoing communications and monitoring, as well as provisions of resource and credit. Focus on results. Concern yourself with what's being accomplished rather than detailing how the work should be done. Your way is not necessarily the only or even best way. Allow the person to control his or her own methods and processes. This will facilitate success and trust. Avoid upward delegation. If there is a problem, don't allow the person to shift responsibility for the task back on you. Ask for recommended solutions and don't simply provide the answer. Build motivation and commitment. Discuss how success will impact financial rewards, future opportunities, informal recognition, and other desirable consequences. Of course, provide recognition when deserved. Last, establish and maintain control. Be sure to discuss timelines and deadlines on the front end and agree on a schedule of checkpoints at which you'll review project success. Make adjustments as necessary and take time to review all submitted work. One of the toughest challenges for a new leader is accountability. Let's look at how we can create an environment of meaningful accountability. You'll want to develop a strong team environment. Create and nurture a team atmosphere, and your workplace will be happier and more productive. And your employees will be more accountable for their contributions. Your team members will be looking at your every move for clues as to what kind of boss you'll be and whether you'll have trustworthiness, character, and influence to succeed. Of course, your behavior will affect your team. For example, you might get into the habit of replying to emails late at night or on weekends so you can clear your inbox and put the ball in someone else's court. However, this type of behavior may signal to your team that you expect them to be engaged in email 24/7. While you can still answer emails at night or on weekends, consider scheduling so they are sent during office hours. Also, make a point of listening more than talking so you clearly show you value the expertise of your direct reports. When you start focusing on being a real leader instead of a nervous new manager, you'll be asking your colleagues how you can best get the work done rather than try and figure it out all on your own. This will show your team that you care about their opinions and expertise, and you don't become the one person calling all of the shots. And when you speak well of your team to your boss, in private and in public, they will know you are on their side. Accountability starts with the leader. Share your vision of what the team can be, but ask team members for their vision as well. Focus on demonstrating your vision, supporting and leading teamwork, and recognizing those who make those significant contributions. Develop a mission statement, post it, and live it. It must have meaning and make employees feel connected to the organization. It also must state what you want the team to be known for and demonstrate its values. Show how team goals tie into organizational goals and how your team supports others within the organization. Show how each person is a necessary cog in the team's success. Be respectful and expect respect in return. Be a positive, motivated, hard worker, and you'll find that others will follow. Structure your team to its maximum potential, combining technology prowess and personal skills. State the expectations clearly and make sure that the team knows the consequences if expectations are not met. Hold people accountable to you and to each other. Address conflict immediately. Always look for ways to make things better and ask team members to do the same, but don't just change for change's sake. Take time to meet with employees individually as well as gather them as a team. To keep people on track, hold regular status meetings, answer questions, and help team members overcome roadblocks. Take notes when you converse with your team members and look for any training the team or its members might need. Be sure the team has all the materials and equipment necessary to be successful. Expect everyone to get along for the sake of the team. Remind the team to focus on the greater good rather than petty misunderstandings. Solicit and listen to ideas and always follow up. Allow the team to develop its own approach to meeting goals. What matters is the end result. Let teams decide what's best for them and make sure every team member has a voice. Make team building an ongoing project. Even in the best of teams, conflict is inevitable. How can we as leaders help resolve conflicts in a manner that leaves all parties satisfied? If you review conflict as something that shouldn't happen, something that harms relationships, it becomes negative and you avoid it or hope it all goes away. But if you see conflict as a fact of life and an opportunity to strengthen relationships, you have a way to resolve conflict by turning it into something creative. Let's talk about ways to resolve conflict. First, agree on a mutually acceptable time and place to discuss the conflict. Then state the problem as you see it and listen to concerns. Be sure to invite those involved in the conflict to use I statements and withhold judgment, accusations, and absolute statements. Then let the other person have his or her say. Don't interrupt or contradict. Do not allow name calling, put downs, threats, obscenities, yelling, or intimidating behavior. We want to be sure to listen and ask questions. Ask fact-based questions like who, what, where, when, and how, so you understand the situation. Ask exploratory questions and use phrases like, if I hear what you're saying, and is this the only solution to our problem? Aim for open-ended questions to get down to the root concern. Avoid accusatory why questions like, Why are you like that? Or why did you do that? Use your own words to restate what you think the other person means and wants, then acknowledge the person's feelings and perceptions. Stick to one conflict and one issue at a time. Don't change the subject or allow it to be changed, such as, I understand your concern, but I'd like to finish with what we were talking about before we discuss this. Try to seek some common ground and find out what they can agree on. What are some of their shared concerns? Allow the team or the individuals to brainstorm solutions to the conflict that allows everyone to win. Request behavior that makes changes. Don't ask others to change their attitude or feel differently. If you want them to stop doing something, suggest an alternative action. Agree to the best way to resolve the conflict and a timetable for implementing it. If the discussion breaks down, reschedule another time to meet. Consider bringing in a third party to mitigate or mediate in the conflict. Often in organizations, we look at conflict as being disruptive. If we as leaders learn to leverage the power of conflict, sometimes we can restore the relationship and even use it for the betterment of the organization. You now have several strategies to mitigate the many challenges of becoming a new supervisor. Please remember, becoming a new manager is an important leadership passage in your career. Step back and think about your leadership presence and evaluate if you are thinking, saying, and showing up as you most hope to and intend. Set a values-based leadership goal. As managers, it's easy to underestimate the impact we have on others' lives as managers. Increase your emotional intelligence and situational awareness. Be direct, respectful, and find strategies to maintain and sustain a stable and grounded presence.